Emma, welcome to Reset.
Hello. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
I'm going to be honest. I was kind of nervous about this conversation. And once I tell everyone what it's about, you're going to know why. You'll get it. I've known Emma for about 2 years now, and I've been a big fan of your work, and obviously follow all your TikToks and things like that. But when Emma and I first started chatting about okay, you got to come on the Reset podcast, what are we going to talk about? We were throwing a few different ideas around, and the one that we landed on is grief. And this is why I think I was a little bit hesitant, because like most people, grief is a feeling that we would rather just avoid at all costs.
Yeah.
And then when I sat with that for a little bit, I was like, okay, if that's how I'm feeling, that's how probably most people are feeling. And then it's a big green flag to say, well, actually, it's a topic we should unpack, because it's something we have no choice but to go through as humans.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of these weird topics that everyone gets faced with in a variety of different ways, and yet no one talks about. And it's a shame, because it's such a human experience and such a beautiful experience when we think about what grieving something or someone or an experience means.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm nervous to talk about it too, because of the kind of unspokenness in it.
Yeah.
So I feel you with that. But I'm also I think it's a topic that needs more attention, more focus, more warmth, more connection, more just compassion and understanding. So I'm glad that we're going to kind of shake it up.
Yeah, me too. And for anyone listening, it's kind of one of those ones that maybe you want to do on a walk or with a cup of tea. I want them to feel like everyone that's listening right now, cozy, like they're here on the couch with us. And it's okay to feel the feelings during this topic, because we live, I think in Australia, we have this real culture of she'll be right, everything will be fine, and we just suppress and think that we need to move through things often too quickly. So from a psychologist's perspective, what is grief? What is happening to us when we're experiencing grief?
So many different things. So grief is more than just sadness, which would probably be the go-to feeling that people would associate with grief. But it's really a bundle of pain, I guess, which is why it feels so confronting and scary and something that we want to avoid. And it's not just bereavement grief, so the grief of losing someone, or it's also could be identity grief, seasons of transition, grief of losing a relationship, breakups. And it's that idea of we only grieve if we've truly loved, appreciated or cherished something. So when we look at it that way, it's actually a yearning for something that has brought us so much life and love and joy, and whatever that might be, whether that is a relationship that's no longer existing with us anymore, a breakup, whether that's a person that's passed, a life phase, a career. You would have maybe even felt that with career changes, although there's seasons of change and there's excitement in evolving into maybe the next evolution, there's also this sense of loss and concern and worry and angst that can come with it.
Yeah, I think that's really important to touch on, and that you can be holding two emotions at the same time. You can be excited for change, but you can also be grieving something that you're leaving behind at the same time.
That is such a common experience of feeling multiple competing emotions at the same time, and we don't as a society know really how to hold them very well. It feels almost wrong. How could we feel so much excitement and eagerness and also so much loss and sadness potentially at the same time?
Yeah.
It's one of those experiences I see a lot, postpartum as well. That feeling of having kind of met your new love of your life, which is so much excitement and so much love and so much joy. And also pinges of oh, that's who I used to be and the identity that I used to have. And that's okay. It's all one. It's all okay to have multiple experiences at the same time.
Yeah.
But it does feel odd for people.
And I feel like whenever, I'm sure everyone listening has probably experienced the death of a loved one at some point. And I feel that can be really messy too, because life keeps moving forward and you go through these cycles, which I'm sure we can talk about soon, where, okay, I'm feeling excited about life again, or like there's glimmers of hope, but I'm then every now and then reminded of a loss and a sadness. And it's, I guess, said, very human to not just, you don't have to be one or the other at any given time.
Yeah. I think that's the main thing with grief. It's like everything's okay. Like if your experience in one day is complete and utter sadness and lots of tears and lots of just grief and grieving, and then another day there's happiness and joy and love and excitement, and then you fall apart, that's okay. Like there's no actual, it's messy. Like true grief, when we're actually like allowing ourselves to experience it, is really healthy and really messy.
Does everyone experience grief in the same way?
It's a good question. There's many models that try to like predict grief. So there's one that's like a grief cycle model that's used a lot. It was actually developed for people when they found out they had chronic illness. And it's that model of like, you know, shock, denial, anger, sadness, and then bringing it back up to hope. And I've kind of gone away from that model because it does kind of make it a cycle. And I've just, from my experience personally, like with grief and also with clients, it's like all over the place. Like there isn't a set way to grieve. So I guess my approach to it is a continued bonds model.
Oh, what's that?
Which is about like the sadness that comes when losing let's pretend we're talking about bereavement, because that's probably a common one.
Yeah.
Like having lost someone that you love, the sadness that comes with that is so beautiful because it showcases like the depth of the bond, and it showcases like a real yearning for someone. There's so much beauty in that. Like it makes me tear up when I'm dealing with clients that are going through that, because I just see so much like yearning and love. Like it's like the biggest expression of love. So the continued bonds model that I like, I guess, advocate for is like, how do we keep that bond alive? Like how do we like lean into all of these emotions and see them for what they are and see the absolute like beauty and humanness in them rather than shy away from them. It's that like your sadness is so indicative of the love that you shared and the deepness of the bond that you've had with whatever you've lost. And that's so special. And how do we honor that? And can we have any rituals in your life that like bring that person back to life in some way? Like how do you continue that thread? Because it's never fully lost.
I think that's beautiful, and those rituals, because I don't know if you've experienced it in your life, but I feel like often when people pass away, we stop mentioning their names at some point because it's hard or it's heavy. And then people are still thinking about them, but having rituals or moments to still celebrate them and remember them is really special.
Yeah, 100%. And that's such a common thing. It becomes almost too raw of a pain point that we all avoid.
Yeah.
As a society and as friends, we avoid.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to trigger someone, we don't want to make it too heavy, or we don't want to push someone if they don't want to talk about something.
Yeah.
And so it's like we all kind of skirt around the topic and we avoid saying names. But it's so important. Like it's so important to speak that person like still into your life and into your existence. And it can be so individual. Like I've had clients that like nature is one of the big ones I see often. Like people going for walks and having a chat with their loved one, or like seeing certain symbols in the world and saying, hi, Poppy, or hi, you know, hi, little one, if you've lost a child, or like having little moments of just connection is so important.
For anyone that's wanting inspiration on what those moments could be, do you have a few ideas?
It's so individual, so it has to be meaningful for the individual. Ones that I've seen, like cooking, So for people that have lost someone who maybe they had a certain recipe or a certain meal that like reminds them of that loved one, like making a ritual of like cooking that meal at a certain time of the year or when they feel like a real separation from that person. Nature is a big one, like connecting with nature, going on a walk and just talking to that person in your mind or out loud, celebrating through like actually having like some sort of sit down dinner with family, if it's like a birthday or an anniversary, and sharing like good stories, like sharing fun stories and having a laugh. Like it doesn't have to always be sad.
Yeah.
I say to clients all the time that like tears are the most highest vibration, the most like beautiful indication of love that I think we have when coming from like a non-distorted place. And a lot of what I deal with is grief is actually not a problem. Like grief is, it's a non-problem. So when I'm dealing with clients, we've got mood problems, depression, anxiety, we've got habits and addiction problems that people want to change, and we've got relationship problems, the kind of problems that people deal with. Grief is a non-problem. It's not a clinically like indicated problem. Like it's a shared human experience. It's like so normal. But what happens is we have healthy grief and we have unhealthy grief. And sometimes delineating from the two is like so important to really just lean into the healthy side of sadness and loss and love and shared memories and happiness in reliving that person and talking about them. But it's so individual. People like candles. Yeah. Do you have any rituals that you would do or that you've seen?
Oh, I feel like you're right. It needs to be definitely for the individual. But I wonder if there's a few ways, because sometimes death comes as a surprise. Sometimes it's a long time coming. And I wonder if there's almost things that you can pre-plan with loved ones if you do have that time. Yeah, where you're like, every time you see a rainbow or something like that.
Yeah. That's a beautiful thought and definitely something that I've seen done when people have a bit of a runway towards potentially losing someone. And that's so complicated when that's the scenario, because there's the gift of a little bit more time and the gift of some level of knowing, but also just the complete pain of a prolonged experience and knowing that you're about to lose someone. It's like, which is so painful at the same time. But often like the beauty that can come in that is having conversations, like talking to that person, really allowing that person to know how much you appreciate them. Speaking about like, come back as a sparrow or like, come back as a rainbow for me, or like, like look over me. Like those types of like conversations are so beautiful and so like beautifully emotive. Yeah, I often sit with clients and will just cry with them. Like obviously I keep myself together. But there's something nice about just having like a human experience with someone. Like even as we talk about this, like I think about clients that are going through that right now and the pain that they're going through, but also the purest love that they're sharing with the people that they're going to lose. Yeah.
How do you know? Because grief can feel icky, whether it's that good, healthy grief or not. How do you distinguish between the two?
Yeah, such a good question. And this is so important. Healthy grief is that real sense of sadness for what's been lost. So sadness for like that person no longer being here, if we're talking about bereavement. And also like sadness for what could have been. So it's like future and past. And it's just that real sense of like yearning for someone to be there and missing someone and wishing it were different, or wishing you could still kind of have them with you, missing their presence, missing a hug. That's all so like beautiful and indicative of like love. Unhealthy grief is when we start to see like blame come in. I should have, I could have, I wish I never had that argument. Maybe if I did this differently, something else would have happened. And so we start to have like little like cognitive distortions come into it. Should haves, overgeneralizations. I should have done this, or I could have done this and that would have saved them. Or I didn't spend enough time, like a lot of regret. can be quite distorted in the way that it comes across, and that just kind of makes something that's a really hard human experience way more difficult and complicated, because then you've got shame and blame and regret and anger and resentment tied into the pain of healthy grief. So often it is talking with someone that can actually help pinpoint what is it that you're thinking and feeling, and like, is that part true? Let's talk about that part. Is that actually fair on you?
Yeah.
So that is probably more like with a professional, I guess, or with like if you've got good friends or family that are just really able to give you space and time, you might have like the fortune of having that. Otherwise, obviously with a professional is really helpful.
Yeah. Do you find that anyone struggles to move forward from their grief because it feels like they're losing the person again that they're grieving, if we're talking about the death of a loved one?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, there's this fear of moving on often that comes with grief, and that fear of, well, if I start kind of picking myself back up and engaging back in life, then I'm not doing that person justice, or I'm like getting further and further away from them. And that's such a common experience, and that's part of like the kind of complicated grief, because it's, if we think about it, it's not true. Like, we're not going, that person can be there, that continued bonds model, that person can be there for the rest of your life. No matter if you've repartnered, no matter if you've had another child, no matter if like life has moved on, that continued bond can still be like honoured and remembered no matter what. And the way of like celebrating that person's life doesn't disappear as your life continues to move on. I do a method called the grief method with clients, which is so powerful and really emotive. Like, often I'm crying in the sessions too. As weird as it is. I'm like becoming really good at like being okay to be a bit more like human.
Yeah.
As a psychologist, I think that's like come with a bit of time.
Yeah.
Like, I can be professional and put together enough, but also like I feel. And one of the things I do in that method is I will ask the client, you know, what are some of the thoughts that are coming up for you right now? And they might say like, well, I worry that if I move on or if I start dating again, then I'm like letting go. Like, I'm really like cutting the bond, and I'm really like not doing them justice. I'm doing something wrong. I feel guilty. Or they might say like, I wish I had said X, Y, Z. I didn't know that was going to be the last time I saw that person, and I can't let that go. Like, that's so painful for me. And so I'll hear all their thoughts, and then it's because I do a lot of role plays in therapy. It's like one of my favorite things, and it's really helpful, I find, and clients find it really helpful. I will then play that person's voice to them and ask them to the best of their ability, be the loved one that's passed, like step into their voice. Like, often people know their loved one like really well. So I will play there, like, you know, I worry that I didn't say this, and I'm really sad about the last conversation we had. And then the client will play the role of the person that's passed. And it's the most moving thing ever, because it helps to like uncomplicate like the complicated nature of it. Because often that's when you hear like I've heard people say things like I had someone that one of their thoughts was, it was someone that had a young child, like a teenager who did get sick, and without disclosing too much, basically she said, you can go, like, you don't have to stay. And the child did pass. And one of the complicated natures of that person's grief was, I shouldn't have told you to let go because I like gave up on you too soon, and then you passed, and it's like a big regret I had. And when I played that role for her, and she played the role of her son to the best of her ability, and obviously it's like we've got to be really safe in order to do this because it's such an emotive kind of practice. Like, he came up with like, I stayed along longer because of the love that you had for me. And like in that instant, it was gone. Like that worry and that fear of hers was like had dissipated just from being able to actually like really role play. Like, is it true? What would your son actually say? You know?
I love that idea of role play. Is it something that, obviously beautiful done in a therapy room, is it something that people could do at home, say through writing in their journal or a letter or something like that, do you think?
Yeah. A lot of journaling practices can be really helpful. Like, what would you like to say to that person? What would they respond to the best of your knowledge? You know the person best. And having a bit of a dialogue in a journal is like a beautiful way to do that. Or speaking it like people can have, obviously we all can have conversations in our head, and we can do that with past people, you know. We can have that level of a role play in our own mind. Sometimes it is helpful to be in a kind of contained environment where you've got someone that can like really process you through things, but it doesn't mean that you can't do it yourself as well.
Yeah. Life can be really busy, and sometimes it's just not convenient to grieve on a particular day or time. There might be a really busy work deadline. We might have commitments looking after kids or just whatever's going on in our life. Is it actually possible, I'm sure it's not necessarily healthy, but is it possible to be like, you know what, I can't deal with this today.
Yeah.
I'm going to let future me process it. Is that a thing?
Certainly possible. And it's really done. And I can totally understand that. Living in our world, there is an idea of like, contain that and deal with it later. What's that word?
In a meeting, it'd be like, can we park that?
Yeah, let's put that on the shelf.
We'll
go back to corporate. We'll circle back on that. We'll just shelve that for a bit.
Yeah.
And of course, like, there is an element of wanting control of your own emotions and your own privacy that is really important. And so being able to just for a moment, compartmentalize is probably the right word, like compartmentalize that part and be able to get on with whatever you're doing. The important thing is that we do pick it back up. And that might be just a simple journal reflection at night. That might be going to a yoga session and being in the shavasana and just kind of feeling into the feelings.
Yeah.
That might be like calling a loved one and actually having a chat. So like playing music that might be emotional and might just make you just cry on the way home from work. But like having those little moments to release the sadness and actually lean into the experience is so conducive to like healing and processing emotion. But it doesn't have to be all the time, and we can pick and choose. Like, I would hate for someone to feel at the mercy of their grief and not able to kind of control at all when it shows up, because then it is like a real vulnerable feeling walking through life, feeling as though people can expose your emotional side at any minute.
Yeah. And I suppose it's good to remind ourselves that even if we do think, okay, I'm going to schedule my grief for Sunday, I'm going to deal with it on Sunday, it's not linear and it's not just going to be a box that you can tick and complete within a day. Like, it is still going to come up in different moments.
100%.
Yeah.
One of the models I chat with clients about with grief, which speaks exactly to your point about it's not that we can just box tick it. Like, I'll schedule that for Sunday, I'll give myself an hour, and after that I'll be perfectly fine and great.
Like, how great if that was a thing.
I know, I
We're
wish.
all like, yeah, tick done. I've dealt with my grief.
I felt that. It won't come up again. I picture it as like a box. Mm-hmm. And when we're first in the throes of grief, the grief is like a huge ball that takes up the entirety of that box, meaning it hits all our edges. Like, we're raw. Like, it hits all, it's not contained. It hits all of our soft spots. We feel like we could kind of be triggered at the drop of a hat. And it takes up our whole mind space. It's very hard. Like, people often describe, and I know for me personally, when I've lost people that I've loved, a feeling of like, why the hell is the world still moving? Like, this doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. And I hear that all often, like, people driving being like, well, why are people still driving around just going to work? Like, what do you mean? Like, the world needs to pause. Like, my world's collapsed. Like, why is life still revolving? Like, why is the planet still turning? Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, this is huge.
Yeah.
Like, why is not everyone reacting, you know? And that's because the ball is, like, so huge. Like, it's our entire experience and existence. And grief, I'm one of those, like, advocates for grief will, like, never leave us. Like, it's not a process that you go, like, I've started, I'm through it, I'm out the other side, I never feel it again. It's our capacity, our box kind of expands. If you think of like a ball now in the middle of a big room and it's floating around the room, sometimes it will hit the edge. This ball of grief will just be in you, floating around, and sometimes it will just kind of like rear its head and hit the edge. And it's in those moments where it's like, oh, I need to honour that. Or maybe I need to ritualise that person. Or I need to just give myself some space. I'm feeling it, and that's okay. That's like, I'm glad. I'm glad that my love for that person is still here and still around and still strong. But it's still there, like it's always going to be there. It's not that the ball disappears and we kick it off into another field and it never comes back.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just our capacity grows and expands.
Yeah.
And there's so much like growth that can happen from people having large like life experiences. It changes people and that's their capacity, their box expanding, their perspective expanding. It's the same when you have your bub, like your perspective on life just gets bigger. Like what is meaningful and valuable in your life will just like, it's already happening, right? It is just expanding. The same when you've had something really, a loss happen. Your perspective on life, your desire to do certain things, your behaviours might change because your box, who you are, has expanded around it. You've become bigger.
During some of my prep for this interview, I was doing research, I was chatting to friends, I was also scrolling grief TikTok, which is...
I haven't done that.
Okay. If you want to feel the feels,
okay.
It's heavy.
I'm one of those that I will literally, if I scroll on a sad video, I will just have tears rolling down my face. My husband will be like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
I got this dog. It's about to pass away.
Yeah, I'm with you. And there's like the grief poetry side of TikTok. I went deep. But one thing that I came across was Jay Shetty was actually talking about carrying grief like a stone in your pocket.
Yeah.
And he was saying that stone never leaves your pocket. You just become stronger. And so carrying it around, it just becomes that little bit lighter.
That's exactly how I see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a beautiful metaphor. I've never heard of that one. But yeah, that's exactly it. You just learn to cope better.
Yeah. It doesn't go away. You just... Yeah.
And nor would you want it to go away. And this is a thing I say with clients all the time. The grief or the sadness or the longing and the yearning is so indicative of your love for someone and the impact they've had on your life and like your gratitude and your just desire for them to still be here. That's so powerful. That is so beautiful. We don't want that to go away. I want you to be loving your life and experiencing like the best life possible. Like I want you to be like so engaged in your life and able to do whatever you want and not feel like hindered by it. But like I want that person's bond to be with you for the rest of your life. That's so powerful. I'm glad you've had that and I'm sorry you've lost it. But I'm like, let's keep it.
Yeah, what a beautiful reframe.
Yeah, I think that's probably what society misses, at least in Australia.
Yeah.
We don't have a great grief process. Like there's societies where the whole community will get involved and it's so spiritual and it's so like ritualized and there's so much encouragement for real outward expressions of grief and anger and yelling and crying and really kind of like dramatic. Like if we saw it, we would be a little bit taken aback potentially in Australia. But in those cultures, there's less of this complicated kind of nature to it. There's often just more continuing bonds models going on just because of the cultural piece of it. There's a cultural aspect to like grief.
Yeah. It's so interesting, isn't it, to kind of unpack that. What happens if we don't deal with our grief and we just, she'll be right, keep moving?
Yeah.
Is it going to come up later in life in different ways for us? Like if we haven't honoured.
Yeah, I
the
think so.
emotion. Yeah.
Probably a bold statement, but I would say like you can often align someone's unprocessed grief or not really leaning into their grief with physical ailments. So like the body will speak if the person's not allowed the emotions to come out.
Yeah.
So you'll see physical ailments, conditions pop up, bold statement, but I've seen like people get things like cancer and like really severe conditions following someone's passing.
Yeah.
Like, you know, with time. Addictions, like people kind of going to more like unhealthy behaviours, having more, say, wine or, just it comes up in some way.
Yeah.
The way is very unique to the individual and to their like body as well, because our bodies, some of our bodies are just more robust and resilient than others. We're just kind of born with a state of like how much our bodies can cope with. So some people will see it more in headaches and not being able to sleep and chronic fatigue or autoimmune conditions or cancer in its like severest form. That isn't, from my knowledge, scientifically backed. It's just anecdotally from what I've seen. But it makes sense to me as a clinician, like if emotions we store in our body, if big emotions that had every right to be there, that meant so much, if they weren't tuned into and focused on and listened to and allowed to outwardly express, then they just get clogged basically in our system. And that just leads to ailments.
Yeah. I'm definitely not a health professional, but I have seen that play out time and time again as well with people. And I think there's definitely something to that. I've heard that saying that our body holds what our mind isn't ready to deal with yet. And that's not healthy. Like we said, it shows up in all sorts of ways.
Yeah.
If someone's grieving at the moment, like a friend or a partner or a loved one, how can we best support them?
Just presence would be like the simplest one. Like just be around. If you know your friend well, like then you'll know better about how to navigate it, because certain people would need the right setting to be able to open up about it. So there's certain friends that you wouldn't want to ask them how they are in a public setting because you know them well enough to know that them falling apart would feel too embarrassing for them.
Yeah.
And so it's like really like trying to think about, from your best of your knowledge, how do you think that person is in life and how can you most safely kind of help them open up? I think the mistake a lot of us make is we avoid because we're really scared of saying the wrong thing. We're really scared of making someone cry. And so then we just kind of avoid the topic, which can make the person feel really isolated and kind of do more damage than good. So I would always say it's better to try than not try at all. Like better to try and speak to that person than not speak at all. The things are definite, like do nots. Do not make any kind of super hopeful remarks. Like people often like will say, oh, my friend said, well, everything happens for a reason. I just felt so angry when they said that. Of course you did.
Yeah.
Yeah, because your whole world's like falling apart and you're not seeing any reason right now.
Yeah.
So sometimes those like remarks that are really trying to be helpful and trying to be positive and like pep someone up are like the most harmful.
Yeah.
It's actually really important and something that I have learnt to do better since being a clinician is like going into the darkness with someone is the healing, not trying to help. So say you were grieving, like sitting with you and saying like tell me what it's been like. What do you miss? What are you worried about in the future without this person? How did you find out? What was that like? How are you sleeping? And allowing the person to go where they need to go and not being scared of it because like it makes sense. Whereas often it will be like, what can I do to help? Should we go and do this and pep you up and like everything's going to be okay. Like you've got this. They loved you so much. They would be so proud of you, which is all us just trying to like, it's going to be okay. I'm really scared of like going there. Like, okay, everyone's okay. We're like putting out fires. Like we're all so scared to touch the topic, which is fine. Like it's fine. We're all just trying to do our best. But if you're really a person sitting there that's like, I have this friend that's going through grief and I'm scared and I don't know how to help them, the first thing to say to yourself is like, you don't have to help. Like trying to help will be the thing that hinders. Trying to understand will be the thing that unlocks. And even saying, you know, like, Ash, I'm really scared because I don't know how to like handle this well for you, but I just want to know like how you're going and what it's been like. Like sharing that you're actually afraid and like you don't know how to best deal with it and you feel like unsure. That's just a shared human experience, which I think is really important.
Yeah, I love that. And I've heard the term once, sit in the mud.
Yeah.
And like sometimes you just need to sit in the mud with people.
Yeah.
And as a optimistic problem solver, I've been guilty many times of wanting to rush through that with friends and take them out and distract. And like I now know through life experience that's not helpful. You just need to sit in the mud and be there with them.
And it can be that ebb and flow of like sit in the mud, then go and have a fun time. Like, and that's the duality of it. Like allow people to engage in distraction in a beautiful way that keeps lightness involved in their life because we all need lightness amongst darkness. Mm-hmm. So allow the distraction. It's not like we always have to be in the mud. But if we're always just up in the let's go out and like let's go to a cafe or we'll go out for drinks and let's go away to Byron or whatever we're going to do for the weekend. If we're always up, then we risk our friend feeling alone or isolated. So a bit of like getting into the mud, getting dirty is important in parenting.
In there. Yeah. As a woman growing a baby, a future mom, how am I going to explain grief and death to my future little girl?
Hopefully you won't have to explain that in the earliest years of life because it is a big topic and everything with like parenting and needs to be like developmentally appropriate because we don't want to overload brains with content that's too much for their little souls. But I would overall, like as a parent, no emotion is bad would be like my key to like parenting. Like you're feeling sad because your friend Tommy's moved away. So that's grief, right? So it doesn't always have to be death. You're feeling sad because your friend Tommy's moved away and their family's gone to live in Canada. That's my example. Okay.
This is a nice light example. Okay,
let's use a light example.
Let's use this. Yeah.
Of course you're feeling sad. Tell me more about you and Tommy. What's he like? How do we make sure that you can still connect with him? What'd you like about him? Like, tell me more about that. Of course you feel sad. He was such a great friend of yours and he still can be, just in a different form. So it's like going into the sadness and like allowing the little one to feel okay that they're sad. It's like stopping the conditioning of like sad is bad, angry is bad. Sad is often powerful. Sad is often a sign of love. Like sad is often a sign of connection that's been lost or a yearning for something. Anger is often a sign of boundaries being crossed or a sign of frustration or not being quite there yet. Like that's helpful. So a lot of like the real talking about emotions in all of their complexity and not having good or bad emotions. If it was to be a conversation around having like someone having passed away, people have all different ways of doing it. And I don't really have like a set conversation that I would have. But using the proper words I think is important when they're kind of like old enough. Like you're maybe not going to do that with a 2-year-old, but when they're getting a little bit older, you know, if it might be a grandparent, hopefully that would be like the most comfortable passing, hopefully. Like it's no one in their very, very immediate circle, you know, grandma, is no longer with us. She's passed away. And that's really sad. We miss her. And we're going to bake some cookies today because she made the most beautiful cookies. And yeah, we're going to miss her, and we're going to do little things to make sure that we can keep chatting to her. And we can keep chatting to her. We don't know where she's gone. Or some people have religious beliefs, so sharing that with their kids, that's fine. We don't know where she's gone, but it doesn't mean she's gone. Like, we can still chat to her. What would you like to say to her? Do you have anything you want to say to her now? What do you love about Nana or Grandma? I don't know. I see beauty in it, but I don't know why I see beauty in it. Am I weird? Do you see beauty in that?
Yeah, and I think it's because of what you've said. Like, there's this reoccurring thread of love through this whole conversation.
Yeah.
You're not going to grieve something that, well, maybe that's actually more complicated. You could grieve something that there was also hatred and anger towards. That's an added layer to it. But yeah, I think it highlights love and connection.
Yeah. And even if it was, you're right, even if it was a complicated relationship, that's when you'll often, not definitely, but often you will have complicated nature in the grief that is helpful to unpack. But there's still a bond. And even if it's just a biological bond, there's still a loss there of a bond. And so it can really confuse people when they've maybe been estranged from a family member and that person's passed, and they feel sadness even though they no longer have like a real connection with that person. Well, it's still a bond, and there's a society pressure of like bonds with family members. There's like so much like stuckness in that would be really complicated to traverse. And in that will be a lot of complicated emotions of like, was there things left unsaid? Did you have to become estranged? Did you make the right decisions? Like that's the complicated stuff that will pop up that's helpful to work through. But yeah, grief comes up even if the relationship wasn't just all sunshine and roses, which is so interesting.
Yeah. So obviously unpacking grief with a psychologist like yourself is a really safe space to do that. If someone's grieving right now and for whatever reason can't get to a psychologist, are there some helplines or resources that you could recommend?
Yeah. So we're so lucky in Australia that we have a lot of free phone counselling services on offer. So Lifeline's one of them. It's often advertised if people are like feeling at risk themselves or feeling any kind of suicidality, but it's not just for that, and that's something to be really aware of. Like, people can call Lifeline for whatever's going on, and some of that could be grief. So that's a free phone service. There's the Grief Line, which is purely for grief, and that's a phone service. Beyond Blue is a beautiful app and a beautiful website and a beautiful service that have lots of different resources if you want to like resource up and like learn more about it. The other thing is, if you're like both of us coming from corporate, like EAP, employee assistance programs, like just reminding ourselves of like, okay, let me just check if my employer has an EAP, because often there's some like great clinicians on the other end and that's free. And so then you actually are speaking with a psychologist that you could have multiple conversations with. The tricky thing with Lifeline and Griefline is you won't speak to the same person. So it can be just really helpful to have like a conversation that just lifts you a little bit or allows you just to feel. But if you want more of a continued kind of rapport, EAP would be really helpful. People often don't know that they can go to their GP and get a mental health care plan. You don't have to have any kind of mental health illness. And as I said at the start, like grief is a non-problem in how I like conceptualize it. There's nothing clinically wrong, but you can still have a mental health care plan, which gives you rebates, and then you can find a psychologist that feels like is a good fit. And that's probably one of the things I advocate the most. And one of the things I say to every single client in their first session is like, if this doesn't feel right, that's totally okay. Don't give up on the profession. It's just maybe that you haven't felt the right connection with me, and that's fine. Like, I will be a great therapist for many, but not all. And try other people until you find the right fit if this hasn't felt like conducive for you. Because often one of the things I hate the most is if someone's gone to see a psychologist, they've had a bad experience and then they give up. Because I've just seen like how much growth and change and support a really good therapeutic bond can have on people. And I hate the fact that sometimes that can be lost if they've had a bad experience. So like testing the waters and trying different things, connecting with like if people are religious, like their church often will have different things around grief. I've seen people really connect in with faith, which has been beautiful to witness. Probably a few, we could put them in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that. Emma, thank you so much for joining me and crying with me on the couch here today. Yeah. I think this has been a really important topic to discuss. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom with everyone. I think, like you said, it's something that we tend to avoid, but we're going to deal with it as humans throughout our life anyway. So yeah.
It's one of those ones that we just can't avoid.
Yeah.
So we might as well talk about it.
We might as well talk
about it.
And
we might as well see the beauty in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we want to continue the bonds.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much,
It's been
Emma.
so nice to chat. Yeah. Appreciate you.
You too.